The KRGS Doors Show, proudly brought to you by KRGS Doors. For all your shopfront roller shutters, roller grills, folding closures and bifold doors, visit www.krgsdoors.com.au. Welcome to the KRGS Doors Podcast. I'm your host, Drew Blackman. The aim of our podcast is to talk to cool people with cool stories, whether it be our suppliers, customers, staff, other business owners, or people from different walks of life, and get to know them a bit better. If you're interested in coming on, drop us a line or email, or connect with us via Facebook, and we can have a chat to see what we can do. Welcome to Series 2 of the KRGS Doors Podcast. We have had a bit of a break, but we are now back. Today on episode 54 of the 4-year-old KRGS Doors Podcast, I'm joined by KRGS Doors Managing Director Clayton Blackman, and we talk to Andrew Barney Barnett, a stand-up comedian and media personality. You may have seen him on Fox Sports with his own show or heard him on SEN Radio in Sydney, but he is here today to tell us how he got involved in stand-up, and the rest is history, as they say. I'll let you in on our next episode, but for now, please welcome to the podcast Mr. Andrew Barney Barnett.
If this doesn't turn you on, folks, you haven't got a switch.
Barney, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today. What is the Andrew Barnett story?
Mate, just your friendly neighbourhood comedian. Living the life of basically not having a real job and getting away with it for now, which is
up until now.
Yeah, up until now. We'll see. As long as we keep paying the mortgage, the missus is happy. So, I've been doing this. I started doing stand-up about 14 years ago, so a little while now, and then so it's just been sort of kicking around doing this, avoiding real work.
What were you doing, Barney, before 14 years ago doing stand-up? What were you doing then, mate? You had a real job?
Yeah, I kicked around a few real jobs, like everyone, just doing stuff that I didn't like. And then I got interested in comedy because I was down in Melbourne just out of the blue during the comedy festival, and went to a few different just lineup shows there, and realised I saw a couple of the acts. I'd always liked stand-up comedy, and I saw a couple of the acts a few nights in a row and realised they weren't doing brand new stuff every night.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, you know what, I'd love to give this a go just once. And then I basically, thought, okay, so there was two mates of mine that were both into comedy, and I said, I'm going to just try this once, bit of a bucket list thing.
Yeah.
So we started going along to regular nights in Sydney, and then, went along, and it's one of those things that sort of gets a bit addictive. If you're either do it once and never want to ever do it again, or, it becomes a thing that you can't not do.
So tell us about that first gig that you had a crack at it.
Mate, first gig, I was at the, you guys know the Friend in Hand pub in Glebe?
Certainly do, at the Glebe there.
Yeah, so they, at that stage, had a regular room on a Thursday night. It was called A Mic in Hand, and it was sort of a bit legendary in the Sydney comedy scene. Everyone would go through there. It was always great. And we'd go along, me and my mates would go along and watch there. And I shot an email to the guy that ran it just saying, do you ever have newbies? And he goes, yep, mate, we love newbies. So they gave me 5 minutes. I think I was second on the lineup that night. And the MC, I remember, he's a bloke by the name of Jeremy Keast, who lives, just a giant of a man, lives in Brisbane now. But he come across to me, and it was in November, so I was doing Movember. So I had a big Kentucky waterfall. And he'd spot me from across the room, and he come across sort of a bit nervous, and I'm looking at him nervous. He goes, are you Andrew? I said, yeah, and it started talking. And then he said to me at the end of the night, he goes, mate, I saw that mustache and thought, Jesus, is this guy a bikie or something?
He's part of the Comancheros.
Yeah. But and it went all right. It was funny because my two mates that came along to that I'd been going with, they were the only two people I'd told outside of my missus, that I was going to give it a crack. And one of the mates, he'd had another mate years before try stand up, and it didn't go great. And so he pulls me aside before I go on. He goes, listen, mate, you've done the preparation. You've written some really good stuff. You're going to go up there. You just give it your all. He goes, but just be prepared. They're probably not going to laugh. That just happens. Comedy's really hard. So just keep going. And I'm looking at him like, mate, is this a pep talk? What's going on here? Like, they're not going to laugh.
He's preparing.
That was his idea of a pep talk. He's like, mate, you're probably a failure, but just keep at it anyway.
Just push through the 5 minutes.
Yeah. But it went well. I got a few laughs, and it was a good room for that because it was like a warm crowd. They were always happy and sort of happy to go with whatever. So, that went well. And then I thought, I'll keep doing this. I've obviously got a talent for it. You get that first gig confidence. And then my second gig was an open mic at the Laugh Garage, which used to be on the corner of Park Street in the city. And it was downstairs there. And that night, the guy who was hosting, so usually the MC host of the night, they get up, especially on an open mic night, they get up, they get the audience laughing, they get them all sorted, and then bring the acts up. So the idea is the acts then have the best opportunity to do well, especially brand new acts. And he was this American guy who was about to go back to the States, and he was trying to hit on the bar girl and not particularly interested in doing the show. So he went up and he literally just went, "Oh, okay, welcome. This is an open mic night. Here's your first act. His name's Andrew Barnett," and brought me straight on. And there were still people getting to their seats. It was like they weren't listening. They were ordering drinks. And I'm like, oh, man.
Tough
and
gig.
at that stage, oh, man, no, it just did the exact same set. But where I got laughs the first time, just absolute crickets. I was like, man, this is not easy. So, but yeah, it was it's good puzzle. It's never quite solved.
So did you think you were funny as a kid growing up, or you just, as you said, just something on the bucket list, you want to have a crack at it?
Yeah, I don't know. I always thought I was funny. I wasn't like class clown type kid or anything like that, but I was always like, I enjoyed sort of joking around with mates, that sort of stuff. Like I played a lot of sport. I loved playing sport when I was a kid, growing up, like, cricket and whatever. So
like
cricket especially. Yeah. But there's a lot of time just sitting around watching other guys bat because, I used to open the batting and get out pretty early. So I had plenty of time.
You had to fill the rest of the day in, mate.
Yeah. So there's plenty of time just sitting around talking bullshit and that sort of stuff. And then, because I grew up mostly down in a place called Corowa, which is down west of Albury, down there. So we were there I think I started school there in kindergarten and we left at the end of year 10. So when I finished year 10, my old man was a school teacher, so he moved around a bit. But
it's a bit chilly down there too, Barney, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah. It was long winters, and really hot summers. That was basically what it was. It was good place to grow up though. Like we right on the Murray River. We just sort of. I remember a few times going down to cricket training as a kid, and it was sort of too hot. It was 42, 43 degrees. So coach just said, "Oh, okay, just swim across the river and back," and then
we're done.
That was training, and it wasn't big on skills, but got a bit of energy out. So good place to grow up. But then so I started because it's country town. You basically, I think we had under 14s, and then when I was growing up, we had that was the only junior age group we had. So you always played with the older kids and stuff too, and being intimidated and that sort of stuff. If you could make them laugh, that was always a good way to get in with the bigger kids. And then you start playing men's cricket as a younger guy, and that's the same thing. If you can make one of the older blokes laugh, then they think you're all right and you fit in with the side a bit. So that was sort of my sort of, I think, evolution of it all. So and then to seeing the way those blokes, like yourself, some of the funniest blokes in the world are just guys kicking around on sporting fields, being smart asses to each other, and none of it would ever translate to actual stage or anything other than that. But it's for mine, it was always the most fun way to sort of do anything.
That's where you hear the best sledges is young blokes with their sport, whether it's league or cricket or whatever. You hear the best sledges on the field or during the game and so forth.
Mate, I had so my oldest bloke, he was plays cricket, and he was playing, I think they were playing 15s this year, and I was square leg umpire and went there batting. One of the kids in the other opposition, like he played and missed a couple of times. Our guy had played and missed. And then one of the kids just shouts out, "Oh, more misses than Henry VIII." And this is like a 14-year-old kid, and I start laughing, and the batsman turns around at me laughing. I'm like, mate, I can't do anything. That was pretty good.
I've got to claim that one.
You're going to use that as some of your gear next.
Yeah, exactly. That's going on a podcast somewhere.
It's interesting when you hear some of that, and you're probably not supposed to laugh, like you're a square leg umpire and it's your team, but you just go, "No, I've got to pay that."
Yeah, exactly. Because, and with especially with junior cricket, they're learning where the boundary is with that sort of
Yeah.
sledging. Because as much as sledging's the darker side or the bad side of it's, when it goes too far is not what you want the kids to learn. But then a bit of humour, it's one of the things I still love about playing sport is some of the humour that goes on between opponents and that sort of stuff. And as long as it's good natured, it just adds, for my money, adds to the game.
Drew's a local referee in rugby league there in the Shire where you are, Barney. So I'm guessing you would hear some good sledges in the game.
Yeah, during you get the A grade guys that, especially the old blokes, come up against the young blokes and they try and think that they're trying to get one over the old bull and then the old bull just sort of teaches them a bit of a lesson and
pulls them into line.
I'm probably not supposed to be out there laughing, but I certainly have a giggle as a referee there, or sometimes add to it even and play on. So
I remember there was, I forget who it was. It might have even been, trying to think which guests we had on the rugby league show when we were at Fox come on, and they were quite a bit younger than Hindy, but their career overlapped. Like he was in his last couple of years when they first started, and they were telling us how he was just a bully.
Hindy was?
He used to pick on the young blokes, and Hindy goes, I did not. It's like, you did. You gave it to me so hard. He goes, well, you were trying. Like, yeah, good competitive stuff. But yeah, you guys, Nathan Highmarsh, the face of the league, the good guy. Yeah, he's a bully.
He won all those medals as the good guy, and little did they know.
Yeah.
We will touch on that very
later
shortly,
on.
Your media career, mate. You mentioned you've been in the industry for 14 years. What are some of the challenges you face as a comedian?
Oh, mate, it's probably, I was thinking about this when you sent the questions through. I was listening to a couple of other episodes too, and I was trying to think about I think for me, one of the biggest challenges I find is it's very unstructured and there's, uncertainty. You can waste a lot of time, and I'm one of the world's great procrastinators. Like, I've often said to my wife, if you want me to do something, give me something more urgent to do as well. And then I'll avoid the thing that's more urgent to do to do the other thing. Like, it's like I'm terrible with that. But then, unless you can sort of I work for myself. Like, there's no boss. Like, especially doing stand up, there's no boss. There's no, if you don't force yourself or get down to write the new material, if you don't enjoy the actual process of all the actual work that goes into the stuff before you see it on stage, then you're never going to do it. So it's just sort of for me, it was like learning to impose that structure on myself and just enjoy the process. And then I suppose the other thing I missed from actually, sort of more structured work is like it can be, unless you reach out and make the effort to sort of meet up with other comedians and do some writing together or socialise a bit, it can be quite sort of like, I can go a whole day without talking to anyone. And if you're on the road, like especially you just won't, you won't interact necessarily with anyone. I remember years ago, I was on a cruise ship, when I was doing a cruise ship, and it was one of the cruise ships where you do a theatre show, but you do your show, which is a 45 to 50 minute set in the main theatre, so 700, 900 seat theatres they have on the ships. And you do it twice. You do an early show and a late show. And then the rest of the time you're just in a guest cabin. You're in the middle of nowhere. You don't know anyone else on the ship. And I remember going to do my early show on that and realised that the first conversation I was having for that day was to 700 people who weren't going to talk back. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this feels weird. Yeah. Like it's you have to. That was the first time. It was my first time doing a ship like that, and I ended up. This is how sort of lonely you get. I ended up hanging out with a Buddy Holly impersonator from the Gold Coast.
As you do.
So yeah, we had dinner, we hung out. I was like, and I was asking questions about being a Buddy Holly impersonator too. Which, I mean, this guy, it can't be. When I was thinking about it too, it can't be a long career because
he only had a short life, didn't he?
Well, that's the thing. This guy would have been 28 and looked young, but Buddy Holly died at 22.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not a job you're doing into your 40s. And then also, like, how long are we going to have people who know who Buddy Holly is? The next generation are going to be looking for Buddy Holly impersonators. So Yeah, I didn't have the heart to sort of bring that up with him, but I teed it on the edge.
That first part about like procrastinating and that type of thing, I've heard you mention. I've heard a couple of other your guests on your podcast mention it, that they sometimes work backwards. That they actually lock the show in, and it forces them to write the material because, hey, I've got this deadline that I've got to meet on this day. I've got to have a show prepared. So it sort of forces their hand that they've got to have the material ready to go.
Yeah, definitely. That's here with the festival sort of a model, the comedy festival model, where they want you to have an hour show for your comedy festival. It is that very much that thing. Like I'll often have, I think when I did my last sort of festival run, I had an idea of what the show would be, and a rough structure, but most of it not written. But you got to have your description of the show and your show title and everything in way before the show, like months before the show, so it can all go to marketing and that sort of stuff. So a couple of times I've had it where I have my show title, and then thinking that I was going to write to sort of that direction, and then what I ended up
changing it,
writing about, in the show, it was like, oh, the show title doesn't make much sense. But, well, who cares?
Barney, would I be right in saying that one of the biggest challenges for any comedian is coming up with new material?
Yeah, it's one of those. I don't know. Like I can't speak for everyone, but for me, like I'm not one of these guys who can just go, okay, I'm going to set aside an hour and just sit down and write.
Yeah.
New stuff, because it's not really how my brain works. Like I have a very long note in my phone called to write, and it's just any sort of little ideas that pop up, and they can pop up anywhere, time, day, night, or whatever. And you go, oh, there might be something in that, and so I just make a note in my phone, and then when it comes time to actually putting it together, writing it, then I go back to those notes and go, okay, what?
Pad them out.
Yeah. And there's plenty of the dot points in there that I'll look at and go, I don't know what I was
I remember what I was talking about here.
When I put that in there, that doesn't make any sense to me. But it's that sort of thing. And you find you go through stages where, like, at times you're trying to write and you're like, I got nothing. And then all of a sudden,
Bing.
You just have, you have 4 weeks where you have, like, a bunch of good ideas, and you pump out a heap of material, and you start to think you've solved comedy. And then you're like, oh, man, I'm real good at this. And then all of a sudden you don't have another idea for a month and a half. And it's, you're back to like, oh, this is hard.
It's interesting you say that. And I've heard you speak about it too, that when you were on the Matty Johns TV show, and as I said, we'll touch on your media career, that a guy you used to work with, the professor, and yourself, one day you were supposed to be on in segment 2 and you had nothing. And so they had to push you back to like the end of the show, because by the time the show come around, you actually hadn't anything written, and you're, okay, well, we got to come up with something.
Yeah. We had a few where we were like real, because when we do the Sunday show, in particular, so everyone thought that, like, they'd watch that segment we do, and I don't suppose you see the work that sort of goes into it. So
scenes.
Yeah, we'd get in there at we'd meet at about 8 a.m. at a cafe with the newspapers and whatever notes we had from watching the footy over the weekend. That this might be something, that might be something, and we'd have breakfast, and then we'd go in the office and we'd try and sort of work up a few ideas. But we'd find whatever footage we needed, we'd find it, get it cut it together, our like rough cuts ourselves. I was hopeless at that, so that was mostly. He's very, very good on the editing and the technical stuff. Like I could lay down a timeline and do a bit of basic stuff, but that was mostly him. So I'd be finding footage, finding headlines, finding whatever, then trying to write the stuff around it. Then if we had to film stuff, then we'd film it ourselves. Like we'd do all that ourselves and cut it together, and so that process, just even like having the idea and then executing it, the process that it can go to TV takes time, and a lot of there's a fair few technical steps in there.
So you put all that together in a day?
Yeah, most of the time.
Wow.
Our best feeling going into a Sunday is if we'd had something from the Friday night show that had been cut for time.
Yep.
And we go, well, that gag, we can reuse that on Sunday.
Yeah.
And so we'd cut it out of that show, and then we'd rejig it and re-execute it and try and fine-tune it for the Sunday. So if we could go in, like, from the Friday show with one or two items that were one or two jokes from there, we go, we're way ahead here.
You were in front.
There was more than a couple of times, like, and I think that time you're talking about, Drew, where I remember real vividly just looking as the clock ticked down, just staring at each other across the desk, just going, nothing. And we ended up putting it together. We never missed air, so we'd end up putting something together. But it was the time pressure and that goes into that. But it's a fun challenge.
Just back, and as I said, we'll touch on your media stuff. But how do you put up with hecklers in your career?
Yeah, hecklers are. It's funny, hecklers. I think you're more terrified of them early, and I think sometimes. There's a few different ways they come up. They're in the room. It's not a big deal for me. I don't get heaps of them. When I do, generally it's someone who's they've had a few, or they want some attention, or they think they're going to get one off, and then
bit of courage.
Yeah, and then just melt back into the crowd. And I find the easiest thing at that point to do is, well, you're not going to melt back into the crowd.
I'm going to highlight you.
Yeah, you want to engage, let's engage. And you just give them enough rope. And then, usually they're like, I don't want this actually to be about me.
Sometimes you see, too, the crowd turns on them as well.
Yeah. Don't stand near me.
That's always the fine line. Sometimes it's like you realise that, it's just a person who's drunk too much. And you're like, if you engage with them, they've passed the point of drunk where they don't realise what they're doing, or they don't realise how they're interacting. Like sometimes you think you're being heckled and you realise it's just a drunk person who has no idea they're talking as loud as they are, or whatever. So the worst one for me, and I think I've told this story a couple of times, but it's like I got heckled. The worst I've ever been heckled wasn't actually at the show. I got heckled when I got home online. Oh. So I was doing an event for soccer. It was an end of year awards function, and you do those. You go in, you do the set, and often there might be some people who aren't that interested. So this room, it was big tables, really nice venue, a lot of tables, and there's just this one table of it was mostly young girls who would have been, it must have been a soccer team or whatever that had turned up, and they would have been all like late teens, early 20s, and they were just chatting during my set. And my usual thing at those sort of things is you're kind of the interloper in their night. Like they didn't know there was going to be a comedian. They didn't sign up to come. They're there for an awards night, so they don't want to listen. That doesn't bother me. But then the other people around them started shushing them, and that's when I'm like, well, I've got to address this. So I sort of had a chat to them. They were quiet for a bit and then piped up again. It all went fine, and I just went off. Like I didn't think too much of it. Then I got home that night, and
they trolled you, mate, did they?
They did. Well, so my wife and I, literally the next day, my wife and I were going away for a weekend away for our anniversary. We'd booked a weekend down in Kangaroo Valley. The kids were at my parents' place, so I got home. It wasn't a late gig, so I got home. She's still up watching a movie, so I got a beer in my hand. I'm on the lounge watching a movie. I'm like, tomorrow we're going away. This is
how good's this?
Life's good. Yeah. And I cracked the beer, and then I just get this notification on my phone. Someone sent you a video on Instagram, and I look at the video, and I'm like, oh, what's this? Look at the video, and it's a girl's from that table is filmed, and she's filming me, and then she pans across to all them, and they're all just mouthing the words boring, boring, boring. And I was like, Jesus, I got heckled on my own lounge. Like,
yeah.
I can't escape this.
I'm supposed to be enjoying this beer.
I got cyberbullied in my own house.
Cyberbullied. Wow.
But that was too, like, I'm like, oh man, I'm sad they didn't like it, but that took a lot of effort because they didn't follow me on Insta. So they had to remember my name, look me up, film the video, send it to them. I'm like, they've gone to a lot of effort.
They've gone to a lot of effort there.
To know they didn't enjoy my comedy. I'm like, okay, fair enough.
So they signed you up for the week after for another gig.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think they'll be coming to any of my shows somehow. Those girls.
There was no ticket sales on that table.
I'm tipping, mate. No. Don't do any soccer jokes anyway, mate, eh?
Yeah, no.
We mentioned, and we touched on a couple of times, you have been gone into media from your comedy. So we mentioned the Matty Johns footy show that you've been on there. You've also had your own shows with the Professor around rugby league and cricket, and done a bit of radio with SEN and things like that as well. How did that all come about?
So this, it's funny. I was thinking about this. I think my career goes best when I don't plan anything. So I sort of got involved at Fox I started there as an audience warm-up guy.
Yep.
So a mate of mine by the name of Ray Badron, who was also mates with the Professor, because the Professor used to do stand-up and then got busy when he was producing TV and working over at Channel 9 and stuff, and sort of dropped out of the scene. And so we didn't really overlap in stand-up, but we had some common mates. And so a common mate of ours was doing warm-up there, and then couldn't do it, and he was getting busy. So I reckon you'd be good at this, Barney. Why don't you, come in and give it a crack? So I went in, met the Professor through that when he was still doing the not the NRL news. I think at that time he was doing it, like he was just doing it in voiceover when it was they'd throw to a news package, and so I met him through that. And then when he started, I think he started on a show for the Rugby Union World Cup. He was doing like a similar segment, but he was on air. So I was doing warm-up for that. And then over time, as I got to know him, if I had any ideas or saw something, I'd just text him. So, mate, you got to do something with this, or you thought of this joke. And then when he got his own, that second year syndrome, he rang me. He goes, mate, love you to come and do the warm-up. And if you get any ideas, keep throwing them at us. And so I did that. And eventually he was like, we have a writing meeting on Wednesday. Come to the writing meeting. And then that developed into I had to go away for stand-up. And I remember he rang me after that and he goes, listen, I reckon, one, we need you there for the warm-up because you know the show really well, so you're good at the warm-up for this particular show. But he goes, do you want to then incorporate that? How about we'll pay you for the warm-up and then we'll get you a couple of days writing work as well because you're, helping out with that. And so, I just was like, okay, yeah, just sort of follow your nose into whatever work pops up. And then started pitching ideas, and then, we need to film this sketch. Why don't you do it, Barney? You can perform it. And then that all sort of developed into the second year. I was doing the NRL store segment, which sort of became a regular segment on that. And then at the end of that year, the Fox got the rights to the cricket, and so we were sitting in our office, and sitting in our in the little office there we used to write, and working on a Friday night show when that news broke. And the guy who was the head of Fox, was going to be the new head of Fox Cricket, he walked in, and he was a funny bloke, and he just walked in and he looked at the Professor and just said, "The Professor's smelly box." We're like, what? He goes, do you want to do a cricket show? Like, think about if you want to do a cricket show. And they were looking at cricket content and that sort of stuff. And then, because by that stage I'd been doing more and more on air stuff, and Professor is like, as much as I like my rugby league, I'm a proper cricket tragic. And the Professor knew that, and he's also a bit of a cricket tragic. We'd talk cricket.
So you
plenty.
jumped at the idea.
Yeah, so he's like, do you want to, and credit to him, because there's not many blokes who have, host shows or whatever that'd be willing to go, why don't you co-host this with me?
Yeah.
Especially in sort of that, that industry. So, and he just goes, oh, we work real well together. Why don't you, you do the co-hosting with me? So then we started the cricket show, and then rolling into the rugby league show the next season, it was very much just, the bosses there were like, well, you're going well.
Different sport, different
co-host
season.
the rugby league as well, yeah. So, that just sort of rolled in. But it was literally from, when I think about it, there was no ever grand plan of this is where I want to get to. It was always just, I'm interested in, I'll go along and do this audience warm-up, and then I like the joke, so I'll pitch joke ideas always, see if you can get a bit extra work. And then just, do you want to come to this? When I first was going to the writing meeting, it was like, we don't have any money to pay you, but if you want to come along and see how it all works. And I was like, you know what, I'll come along and do that.
Experience.
Pitch jokes, and you sort of just follow your nose into work. I looked at where we ended up, and I was like, I could never have planned or
having your own show.
Tried to design a path to get to where we got to, but it just sort of worked out that way from trying to take an opportunity. When you get the opportunity, take it and work hard and do your best. And
from doing warm ups, mate, to being in front of the camera.
Yeah. I remember I had another comedian mate look at me. He'd done a bunch of TV work, and he just goes, you did what every TV warm up person when they first start thinks they're going to do, and no one ever does. Like, yeah. Turns out I did, but
we had
it wasn't the intention.
One of our past episodes, we had
Barney
a gentleman,
would know. Steve Philp.
Philpy, yes, he's mad as a cut snake. That bloke. I love him.
He is loose. He was one of our early members,
guest,
wasn't he?
Yeah, early
he was a guest on our podcast, but he used to do the warm up for the footy show.
Yeah, he did, and he did all our warm up at. So when I started doing on screen stuff, at first when I was doing the NRL store, I'd do the warm up and do the NRL store, which was bizarre because you're trying to get like start the applause and the laughter or whatever's going. So I'd just be looking at the audience, going, "Come on, I can't lead you in this. Once I'm on air, you guys just got to go with me,
back me."
And so back me here, team. So which was good. But then by the next year, by the time we were doing the cricket show and stuff, I was co-hosting. I said I can't do the warm up and it's too much, and especially being new to the more taking on that co-hosting role of knowing you got to be so much more across every detail of the show. What goes next, okay, this is my item, that's your item, when to jump in, when not to. That's got to be your focus. You can't be doing the warm up as well. So that was when I said, well, they said, oh, who do you want to do warm up? And that's when we started getting Philby in, and we had Tommy Tuxedo who did a bit for us as well. He helped out. He's an absolute champion. He was one of our he started there as our one of our production assistants, and he was invaluable. Very funny guy. Tommy Erskine, his name is. He's absolute champion. So, but yeah, then Philby sort of came in, was doing all the Matty Johns warm up as well, because that's the other thing. I'd do the Friday night show, but I'd be there working. So my Thursdays, I'd get into the office about sort of 10 a.m. and then I'd leave. I'd do the warm up. I'd write all day for the Friday night show and work on that and film whatever we need filmed, any pre-tape stuff, and work on all that. And then I'd be there till sort of after the late show. I'd do the warm-up for the late show for Matty Johns. Yeah. So I'd be getting home at sort of 11:30, midnight. But then I'd be back in the office by 8 a.m. the next morning.
For the Friday show.
For the Friday show, the full. And so going into the next year of that, I was like, we need someone who can, do proper the
warm-up.
Cover all the warm-up. And Philby, to be honest, Philby's way better at all that than I ever was. So we landed on our feet there. He's a champion.
It must be an extremely proud moment, and where you've sort of got this idea in your head, and then you put it on paper, and then it goes to filming, and then you see it on the TV. You've just had this idea, and it might be a random idea, but it must be extremely proud to see that go into fruition.
Mate, it was pretty surreal. There's a few things, especially early on when I wasn't expecting that, when I was going along with just sort of pitching ideas. I remember in the first year we had a show that landed on May the 4th, and my kids were they were little, but they were all about Star Wars Day. And so we were pitching just weird little things like that. And I said, why don't we do a Star Wars theme? And so that was one of the first dress-up shows they ever did. So they had the whole makeup. The professor was Yoda, and, I think it might have been the second year, but it was one of those years and I was like, it just was something I threw up randomly that occurred to me on the Wednesday when we were sitting in a coffee shop in the writing meeting. And then all of a sudden you're seeing James in 3 hours of makeup to get made up like Yoda. And you're like, wow, this escalated.
This has gone over the top now.
This may be out of control.
Yeah, exactly. I think we had Josh Reynolds on the show. He came in as Darth Vader, and we took the full entry, and then took the helmet off, and it was great. Yeah.
Away from work, how do you relax?
Mate, I like to. I got a couple of kids, so I tend to spend a lot of time out of the house, working nights, and you're away a lot of weekends. So when I get time at home, I like to make the most of it. So we just had as of recording, we just had the long weekend recently, and it was fantastic. Like I worked the Friday, Saturday with gigs, but then Sunday, Monday, I just cleared those days. So I think I like to sort of do like I realised early on, if I was going to have time off on a weekend, I've got to make the most of it with the kids. So do like family movie night or something like that. Make it special. So I also like to cook. So this long weekend, I think I did on the Sunday, I got up early and I made beef and Guinness pies. So I put the meat and everything in the slow cooker. So that went all day. And then one of my sons has been wanting to have a fire pit in the backyard for a while. So in the afternoon, we had a bit of gardening to do. So I said, you help me with this. I'll put the fire on. So we had the fire and we cooked sausages on the fire, which he thought was great. So that was lunch. And then, made the pies and we watched a movie. And
it's been the weather for that type of thing, Barney.
Mate, it's magic. Just sort of that sort of stuff. I love, I've got a smoker too. So I like smoking, meats and doing all that sort of stuff when I get the chance. So it's, I'm much more of a homebody than I ever thought I would be, but only because work takes me away so much.
Barney, your show that you had with the Professor was obviously a smash hit there for a couple of years, and then it's no longer.
Yep. Yeah.
What's the outcome there, mate?
Mate, COVID hurt us in the end. Yeah. So going into that year that COVID hit, 2020, we just basically everything was going well. We just re-signed with Fox for 3 years, and the plan was, we were going to be doing our rugby league show on a Friday night, a version of our show for the Fox Footy, the AFL channel as well.
Oh, yeah.
So, which was going to be it was going to be a lot of work. So, and then as well as that, we were going to be doing the cricket show over the summer. And
so it was all year round.
Yeah. So they'd signed us for 3 years of that, doing basically, I suppose, if you look at it that way, 60 to 80 shows a year, which was going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be a lot of fun. But then obviously COVID hit. They had to really, at the same time, I think Fox had some, I think Fox Sports merged with Foxtel and took on a lot of their debt. And so they basically just had a situation where they had to lose a lot of shows over COVID. And I think they lost 10 studio shows and 3 of them were ours. So,
so it was it was a toss-up between the Matty John show and yours type thing, man, I'm guessing, yeah?
Yeah, no. Right, we can't do the footy analysis or the actual other stuff. We can do the silly stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
We can't actually give any good opinion on any of the actual sport. So, no, so they a bunch of those shows they had to sort of lose. And so, we stayed on those contracts for that time, but basically we were back just like where they'd signed us to do a bunch of shows. We were doing like a segment a week on Matty John's, which sort of they weren't getting the value out of the contract by the end of it. So, which we sort of knew was coming. So it's just one of those things that happens in entertainment. And it wasn't wasn't to be.
Yeah, rugby league show, mate, that you had with the Professor and Hindy of a Friday night there, and dressed up in the old jackets, the retro jackets with the backdrop of Leichhardt Oval, mate. They used to be the best.
Mate, that was a lot of fun to do. I mean, Hindy's one of the great human beings to work
with. Schooners on the table.
It was funny. I remember we got a complaint. So
really?
Well, it was so when you if you call in to complain, it's all recorded, and so we got this complaint, and one of the EPs came in. He goes, "Oh, boys, I got to let you hear this complaint," and it was a guy who sounded like he maybe was 160 years old. He's sort of, how disgraceful it is that I tune in on a Friday night and Nathan Hindmarsh is drinking beer on TV. We're just like, it was his big thing, the Schooners. And we're like, do we have to change? He goes, no, don't worry about it. But I just thought you'd appreciate it. Like, yeah.
And now they make a big thing out of it on the Matty John show with the VB.
One of the sponsors.
With VB's one of the sponsors. Fletcher's on there.
Well, even the Channel 7, The Front Bar, which is an AFL show.
Mick Malloy and that.
They're all up there having schooners.
They've got Furphy now, but they used to have Carlton Dry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having a drink.
Yeah, we did it before we even had a beer sponsor. So we just did it because we like beer.
Yeah. It's a bit like this podcast, mate. Just 3 blokes sitting around having a beer.
Yeah, exactly. Mate, why wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
One thing I did notice on your socials, mate, recently was the variety bash that you were involved in. Is that something travelled around the countryside visiting people?
Yeah, mate, that is one of the highlights of my year. I've done it the last few years with them. So I've signed up with them to go on, and so New South Wales Variety Bash is the main one I'm involved with, which is basically, if you don't know Variety, it's a children's charity. Their philosophy is that that doesn't matter where kids live, they should get the same opportunities to resources and that sort of stuff. So a lot of little country schools or community organisations that need a bit of extra money or funding. The people on the bash, they raise money all year, and the whole idea of the bash is that's when the money they've raised, they get to go out and deliver it to, the organisations in these little country towns. So basically, we started in Gunnedah this year, and toured up through northwest New South Wales, through a bit of southern Queensland, through the Downs, Darling Downs, and then back down through Tamworth and that. And you go, basically, my job is I MC all the events. So every morning you start at like maybe a primary school. There was one outside Tamworth, I believe, that I think there was 17 kids at the school. But they had a lot of kids that have ADD and sensory issues. So one of the things they'd wanted was pedal desks for the kids. So they're desks with the pedals under there. So the kids that fidget can just be pedaling, and it helps them focus on what they're learning. Like all this sort of real practical stuff. Because what happens is when Variety go to the schools and go, okay, like either the schools reach out to Variety or they go to the schools or organisations, say, what do you actually need? We've got all these people, and so we bring 100 odd cars and 300 odd people through, and the bashers are all dressed up in sort of, there's guys that dress up as the Flintstones, there's guys that dress up as, there's these young blokes that are really impressive, like they're in their early 20s and they dress up as Scooby-Doo and SpongeBob SquarePants and that sort of stuff, and they roll in, and you see these kids that, their school's, tiny, and they don't see that many people any given year, and their eyes are lit up. These you got 300 lunatics all dressed up, everyone's there to play with them and have fun. So yeah, that's and then so basically you go from the morning event, then you take all these dirt roads, you go out, see great parts of the back of Australia, and then you end up at another community organisation or a school or whatever that needs the grant for lunch, and they put on the lunch for you. And Woolworths do a lot helping the community. They donate a lot of the food and stuff to feed the people on the bash, and then so I host that event. We deliver the check, and then each night we have a little event for the bashers in wherever we're staying overnight, and then you get up and you do it all again. I think I set the world record for most bacon and egg rolls eaten that week, because you turn up to these country towns and they're like, oh, there's 300 people coming. We'll cater for 1,000 things.
Yeah.
Hospitality plus. Yeah.
Oh, mate, unbelievable. But yeah, it's one of the highlights of my year, just because you get to, I don't know, it's different to the stand-up in terms of, I'm not there to, tell jokes. I'm there to make it fun and there to just, do some good work. So I love doing it, and it's a good cause. And if I can't recommend, like if you're thinking about getting involved in any variety bash event, it is the people on it. It's one of the great weeks you'll ever have, because there's a lot of fun to be had. There's a lot of country pubs that you can stop at on the way, and pump money back into small communities is what the bashes are all about.
They need it.
Mate.
Well done.
Yeah.
Now, mate, to finish our podcast, we ask our fast 5 questions, but it's actually, I've got 6. I've added an extra one.
Oh, all right.
I've got one for him too.
Okay, so 7 to go. It's
a Super 7 now.
Super 7. But my first one is, and it may be just that, no, I don't have one. Do you have a favourite joke?
Oh, I don't. I'll tell you one. This comes and goes. I'll tell you, I heard one really good recently. I was up doing a gig in Hervey Bay with Tahir, and we were up there with Darren Center of all people was the guy that took us up there. We were doing a fundraiser for him, because he does a thing called the Dunga Derby, which is similar to the Variety Bash. Yeah, he's basically the unofficial mayor of Hervey Bay. He's been living up there 6 years now and knows everyone. He's an absolute champion. But we were on a table after I'd done my set. We were on a table, and there was a couple there, and the guy was a Kiwi, and he goes, I'll tell you a joke. And his wife straight away, don't do that to a comedian. They don't want to hear your joke. He goes, no. He goes, I heard this one when I first arrived in Australia. He goes, because back then Kiwis used to get a lot of
Stick.
a lot of stick. And I'm like, okay, tell me the joke. He goes, so is Kiwi guy and an Aussie guy out on a job, right? And they're looking for where the work site is. And the Kiwi guy's driving, and the Aussie guy's got the map. And the Aussie guy looks and he realizes they've missed a turn. He goes, oh mate, I think we've gone past it. He goes, can you make a U-turn? And the Kiwi looks at him and goes, make a turn, mate. I'll make her eyes water.
Yeah. Can you make a turn? Absolutely.
Very
What
good.
about like we're talking about league there, mate. You've obviously been involved with league. My question was, who do you support in the NRL?
Mate, Knights all the way. Newcastle
Knight.
Yeah, we moved there when so after Corowa, we moved there in start of '98. So Dad got
just won the comp in.
Yeah, mate. So Mum and Dad both grew up in Sydney, and Dad always loved his league and his union. But down there, especially then, you didn't get access to any real league. We got to see State of Origin. 3 State of Origin games in the grand final were the only thing we'd ever see live.
You wouldn't get the ABC game on a Saturday, 3:00?
No, not usually. So because everything came out of Melbourne.
Oh, I see.
All our TV channels came out of Melbourne. So we I remember State of Origin my brother and I were obsessed with. But I remember I'd worked a morning shift at Safeway, and Mum and Dad were in Newcastle looking at houses that weekend, the weekend of the '97 grand final, and I got home and watched the second half. From my shift, I got home in time to watch the second half of the grand final. I was like, man, where am I moving? This looks amazing.
Yeah, count me in here.
Yeah, exactly. Jumped on that bandwagon right in time.
Well done. Now we'll hit the normal Fast 5 questions. What would be your last meal? And this will be interesting, saying that you're a bit of a cook. What would be your last meal?
Mate, I think I'd go like a nice pork belly.
Ooh.
Or maybe a southern barbecue style, like andouille sausage with some brisket and some of that stuff. But I definitely have some pork belly in there. Like I'm into pork belly burn ends at the moment as a bit of an entree. You guys had those?
I'm not into the pork belly, no, myself, but my dad's a big fan of it. He likes it.
So pork belly burn ends are without making this Fast 5 too slow.
That's all. Mate, we've got all day.
You get your pork belly, you cut it up into cubes, and then you season it with like a nice, like a Swedish rub with a bit of spice.
Yes.
In the smoke for 3 hours or so, nice and low. Get them up to temperature. Take them off. Then you rest them for a bit, cover them in like a barbecue sauce with a bit of brown sugar and maybe like a maple or depending on your flavour, sort of coat them in that, and then you put them back in the smoke at a bit of a higher temperature to candy up to caramelise that sauce. And once the sauce is set, basically it's like candied pork belly. It's the best.
That is one of the items on the menu at Mittagong RSL.
There you go.
Pork belly.
Ooh, really?
So what time's dinner tonight, mate? Can we come over? Or?
Mate, I'm actually out tonight.
Oh, how convenient. Right. Yeah, how convenient.
I'll tell you this, though. My parents are coming because my wife's away at the moment, so my parents are coming down to hang with the kids. And I said to my son, I'll do something in the slow cooker so that they don't have to cook dinner when they get here. And he's the 13-year-old says to me, Dad, can you do that meat with the bones that we have with mashed potatoes? I'm like, what? And it turns out he was talking about lamb shank.
I was going to say lamb shank, is it?
Yeah, my house smells amazing. My house smells amazing at the moment, and I'm going to be eating little sandwiches and a slice of pizza backstage at a comedy theatre.
You do love a slow cook this time of year.
Yes.
Very
nice.
Yeah.
And it's
perfect time of year for it.
It's probably a cold pizza too at that backstage, mate.
Yep.
What's your drink of choice?
I tell you, I'm mostly like if I'm just out and about, mostly I'll just go with beer. But my favourite drink to have of a week is, especially if I've got nothing on Sunday, is getting home after a gig late Saturday night. Everyone's in bed, like the house is quiet, all my work's been done for the week, everyone's all right. Then I'll pour myself a nice Scotch or an Irish whiskey and just sit on the lounge and, watch some TV that I've watched 1,000 times to unplug. But that's that reward for the week one is a nice scotch or
just on the rocks, mate.
Yeah, just on the rocks.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah, I like the honey flavour.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
One of them.
There's a few good whiskies kicking around now, and I got to say, I it makes you feel successful too. You know what I mean? Like you feel like you see the old movies with the president drinking a whiskey.
It's a bit like Yellowstone, Barney. They're there to just pour themselves a quick whiskey. I mean, the same thing, just on the rocks, boom.
Exactly.
Bit of John Dutton. Nothing wrong with that.
There you go. What is your favourite movie?
Mate, I like Forrest Gump.
Run, Forrest, run.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that at as a kid when it first came out. I was down at the cinema down at Cronulla with my grandmother, and it just was one of those real nice. So she took me and my brother out. We went to the Cronulla RSL for dinner. Went and saw the movie. Walked along the Esplanade. Nice summer night. It was great. And but I love that movie. And I remember when I was at Fox, because I do have this just sort of follow my nose into work and that sort of stuff, and I've ended up in some weird places because of that.
I can imagine.
And I remember one of the producers at Fox just looks at me and goes, "You do have a touch of the Forrest Gump today."
Was that a compliment? Was that a compliment?
I don't know, but he had a pretty good life.
Could be life's like a box of chocolates for you. You don't know what you're going to get.
And I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is.
There you go.
There you
go. Who is the most famous person you have in your phone?
Oh, probably Warnie.
Wow.
Shane Warne. Yeah.
We haven't had that one before.
That's probably tops it.
Mate, you're in front there.
Yeah, mate, I don't think I'll ever delete that number.
No way
Obviously,
in the world.
It's no good now, but it was, getting to work with him a couple of times on the cricket show. And then, like I think the last, we had a Zoom with him during that summer after COVID. We were trying to work up we're trying to pitch him on an idea for a travel show with him and his kids, which we were sort of, obviously working on towards before he tragically passed. But he was one of those blokes. I didn't meet him a bunch and didn't know him super well or anything, but just one of those blokes that you meet and it's like, oh, you're exactly what it says on the label. Like I've never met a bloke who was so comfortable with who he was and where he was in life. Like he just sort of, He
always looked. To me, he looked like it was a bloke that never thought he was any better than anyone around him.
Mate, I remember chatting before we met him, had him on for the first time. I was chatting to one of the makeup ladies at Fox, and she said, "Oh, have you worked with Warnie before?" I said, "No, we haven't." We'd had a Zoom with him that week where we're pitching on the cricket thing. We'd always do the challenge at the end of the show. And he goes, "I'm up for anything. Let's just not do a thing where you bowl at me. I think we can do better than that, boys." And I was like, he bowls at us. And I'm like, you know what? He's done that on so many. I like that he wanted to do something different.
Yeah.
And then, but I was talking to her and she told me this story about when they had to go do a photo shoot for the Fox promo and they were doing it at his house. And she got there early and he'd sort of seen her parked out the front and he went out and realised she was there for that. He goes, "Oh, come in." And he goes, he just took me on a tour of his house, showed me around, made me a cup of tea. Like he was that's what he was like. He just was one of those blokes who just
down to earth.
Didn't sort of matter.
Didn't matter that he'd taken 700 wickets.
Best cricketer probably of all time.
Best spin bowler of all time, Didn't matter.
Yeah. So, it was pretty surreal, especially too, like his peak was right in my, obsessed
wheelhouse.
Teenage years of wheelhouse.
Well, there's nothing better, mate, than watching him like Test cricket. Like before, sort of those guys come along, you wouldn't really sit and watch Test cricket for 5 days. You know what I mean? But when Warnie and McGrath were bowling from each end, you were sitting on the end of your seat, and then you had blokes like Gilly and Ricky Ponting and batting like. Gilly was batting Test matches like it was a 1 day, like a 2020.
Yeah,
I remember my old man telling me about because I vaguely remember that Ashes series that we won in the 80s. I was late 80s maybe, and I was but that that side of the 80s, the Alan Border sort of
Tubby
side.
Taylor.
Yeah, where they'd struggled for so many years.
Yeah.
And I remember being in the 90s just watching, the guys just dominate. And my old man going to me, this isn't how it always will be.
Yeah.
Because, my real, when you first start really paying attention, was right in that 90s
We're on top.
era where we were just unbeatable in all formats for years. So
it was Australia v Australia A.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the World 11.
That's right.
Yeah, certainly. Mate, and if heaven does exist, what would God say when you arrive at the KRGS Pearly roller shutter? He's done a bit of renovations up there, got rid of the gates, put a roller shutter in. What would God say when you arrive there?
Oh, I don't know. I'd probably, I've got a few. Hopefully he'll say to me, you got some relatives inside that want to catch up and they've been taking bets on whether you'd make it. So
he'd take you over to the comedy club anyway, mate, wouldn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
He'd put you to work, most likely.
Put you to work up there.
You want to see a real comedian? Come meet Carlin.
Yeah.
He didn't think I existed.
Andrew Barnett, mate, thank you very much for giving up your time to come and have a chat with us on the KRGS Doors podcast. Really,
mate, absolute pleasure.
Really appreciate you having a chat with us. So good to get an insight on the comedy side of things that happens behind the scenes and how you've done it and over your career. But mate, really appreciate talking to you and having a chat and giving up your time.
Mate, it's been my absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
For our listeners, you can, while you're listening, after you finish listening to this podcast, jump onto another one. It's called Crowd Workcast. It's Barney's own podcast. He chats to other comedians and that type of thing. It's a good listen. It's you'll get a laugh and you sometimes will get emotional about their stories as well. It's a really good listen. It's one of them things that you probably don't expect to. No episode's the same.
Yeah, no episode's the same because I will not commit to a format. I just talk to. My whole philosophy with that is I try and go wherever the conversation feels interesting. So, hopefully, I enjoy doing it. So, hopefully, people enjoy listening to it. But it's one of those ones I sort of do without much agenda. I try and do it without much agenda, other than just trying to be interested in who I'm talking to.
Well, mate, you've got one listener, if that means anything. So
You're the one.
I do enjoy it. Mate. So, do you have any stand-up shows coming up that you want to plug?
Mate, I am. I'm just trying to think. I'm kicking around with the Sydney Comedy Festival in the next little bit, doing a few of their runs with the Sydney Comedy Festival Showcase Tour. I'll be at the Comedy Store a little bit, but you can find all those details on my. I generally try and plug them on my Instagram, which is at Andrew Barnett Comedy. I'm also Andrew Barnett Comedy on Facebook, or I am on TikTok, although I don't really look at it much.
We'll put all those in the show notes, mate. But just after chatting to you, I think there might be a show that Barney's Cooking Show or something like that might be an option there on Fox. Maybe you can get a footy player in and do cooking with him or something like that.
That sounds fantastic.
That brings the door down on the 54th episode of our chat with Andrew Barnett, stand-up comedian and podcaster. It is a great story to see how he started and now is on the big stage. For more information on Andrew, you can visit his website, www.andrewbarnettcomedy.com, or follow him on Instagram, also Andrew Barnett Comedy. You can also search for all his podcasts. Have a listen. If you've missed any previous episodes of the KRGS Doors podcast, you can download them from our website, www.krgsdoors.com.au/podcast, or on your favourite podcast player, search KRGS Doors. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. This also boosts our ranking and my ego. The other thing I suggest, if you've enjoyed the podcast, visit your favourite podcast player and leave a review or a rating. Keep your ears peeled for our upcoming next episode where we speak to Michael Rowe from Pytha Partners. With over 30 years in the joinery industry, Michael Rowe knows a thing or two about the game. He first discovered Pytha as a shop-fitting apprentice and soon learned to love the capabilities and the potential of this user-friendly program. He talks about his life in the industry and also his love of lawn bowls. It is certainly not a chat to miss. Keep your ears peeled for this one. I've been your host, Drew Blackman, and you've been fantastic for tuning in today. As always, you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. Thanks. Till next time. The KRGS Doors Show, proudly brought to you by KRGS Doors. For all your shopfront roller shutters, roller grills, folding closures and bifold doors, visit www.krgsdoors.com.au.